Hello, everyone. My name is Carissa Ramos, and thanks for tuning into my TED Talk. Gay is okay, teaching children about the LGBTQ community through literature. The purpose of my TED Talk is simple. I'm aiming to teach viewers that being gay is okay and that same-sex family representation in children's literature is not inappropriate. In other words, I am going to explain why we need more children's literature that focuses on LGBTQ topics and characters. All kids should be reading on a regular basis, and not just when in school, but at home too. In this day and age, technology has allowed us all to become lazier than our predecessors, and while there is nothing wrong with using devices, reading is vitally important for children. Children have the ability to learn a huge amount from books, morals and manners to name a few, as a book always has a deep meaning and sets an example for young readers. LGBTQ children's books are sometimes recognized as being too mature for children to fully understand. However, there is an innocence to be found in many. With these types of books, we are offering children honesty. More importantly, we are offering honesty about identity. By teaching the younger generation about the LGBTQ community, we are paving the future to be less homophobic than it currently is. As the LGBTQ community continues to grow, more children will grow up around it or even in it. Just like any other type of literature, there is a place for LGBTQ children's books, and inclusive books can have the power to teach young children about homosexuality in order to instill acceptance and tolerance in them. Additionally, they can be a pillar of comfort for a child who does not understand themselves, or they can be reflective of a child's own family and/or friends. By starting discussions about homosexuality and transgenderism early in children's lives, we increase the likelihood that they will grow into tolerant and respectful adolescents. After all, pride can never start too early. What children read paves the way for how they view their own self, in addition to how they view others. With that being said, it is important to teach young children about the LGBT community at a young age to mold them into accepting human beings. A book can act as a window and show you the world, or it can show you a reflection of oneself and act as a mirror. This is especially important for children because they need to see things from other viewpoints, or they will fail to understand how to connect with others. Human connection brings complex values to our lives. Relationships give us a sense of belonging in the group, a sense of identity in contrast to others in that group, and a reason to not feel lonely. We learn from others' experiences and insight, and we learn together by pursuing new experiences. In order to elucidate this matter, I am going to use 5 children's books that are excellent examples of the inclusiveness of LGBTQ, gender, and identity in children's literature. These books include Worm Loves Worm, Heather Has 2 Mommies, and Tango Makes 3, I Am Jazz, and lastly, Sparkle Boy. So what will happen to children if they do not have books to read that represent their gender, identity, ethnicity, race, etc.? Well, if we fail to produce stories that cover all topics, it leaves children to feel left out, unimportant, alone, weird, and embarrassed. Children who come from homes that do not fit traditional stereotypes can find their families in inclusive stories, whereas children who do not fit traditional stereotypes can find themselves. Books are windows into the diverse lives and experiences of the world, and they work to explain non-traditional family dynamics outside of one's own. This includes families where there are 2 mothers, 2 fathers, 1 mother, 1 father, step-parents, and so on. All people deserve to be represented in literature, especially children's literature. If we omit certain groups, like the LGBT community for example, these children are going to feel left out and unimportant. Most children do not know about LGBTQ families until they actually meet one personally. This is where books come in, because they have the ability to teach children about people they might never have the opportunity to meet. Teaching children to express themselves is important to their development, especially while they are young and have not experienced peer pressure to conform to society's standards. We need many books that elaborate upon LGBTQ families, but we also need books that include LGBTQ characters and simply tell a story. Instead of placing a major emphasis on this topic, we should include such characters so children will actually enjoy reading the book without feeling like they are reading to learn something. I want to emphasize that just because a book contains gay characters does not mean that children will become gay after reading it. Some parents have this fear, but it is simply not true. But even if it were, I think all parents should be accepting of their child. Children are curious, therefore they ask many questions. Some common questions or concerns they might have regarding to these topics include, but are not limited to, what does gay mean? Can girls marry each other? Can boys marry each other? Pink is a girl's color. That's so gay. The key to answering their questions is to be as straightforward as possible. We need to simplify things and avoid any embellishment. Some sample responses include, but are not limited to, people can fall in love, no matter their gender. Gay means two people of the same gender love each other, two men or two women. All families deserve respect. That includes families with two mothers or two fathers. All people deserve respect. It is not okay to use the word gay disrespectfully to mean something is bad. Gay refers to either men or women, but most of the time it is used to refer to men, whereas lesbian is used to refer to women. Making fun of people by calling them gay or queer, lesbo, is not acceptable. It can hurt their feelings. Sparkle Boy by Leslie Ann Newman, illustrated by Maria Mola, is a book that follows a young boy named Casey, who loves traditional toys, but also loves things that sparkle and shine. He wants everything his older sister Jessie has, but his sister is dubious despite the elders in his life embracing his self-expression and interests. However, when Casey has a run-in with the boys for wearing girly things, Jessie comes to his defense and realizes he has the right to wear whatever he wants. This is a heartfelt book about acceptance and the freedom to be yourself. The illustrations depict what looks like a Hispanic family, or at least one that has Hispanic roots. The skin complexion, the gold hoop earrings that Jessie wears, and the use of the word abuelita, meaning grandma in Spanish, are all great indicators. There are very few children's books that feature diverse children who are exploring their sexuality, making this one stand out to me. I Am Jazz by Jessica Herthel and Jazz Jennings, illustrated by Sheila McNichols, is a book based on the real-life experience of Jazz Jennings, a transgender child. Ever since she was 2 years old, Jazz knew something wasn't right. She was born a boy, but felt like she had a girl's mind. She adored the color pink and playing dress-up, and felt odd when she wore boys' clothing. Her parents struggled to understand her until a doctor explained she was transgender. Despite the expression her parents allowed after that, she still faced hardships at school, like kids teasing her for who she was. Transgender subject aside, this is a book about accepting and loving people for who they are, something I think many children need to be taught. In my opinion, this is a good book to gently introduce children to trans identity. And Tango Makes Three by Justin Richardson and Peter Parnell, illustrated by Henry Cole, is a book about two penguins who form a non-traditional family. Surprisingly enough, this is based on a true story about Roy and Silo, two male penguins at the Central Park Zoo in New York City. A friendly zookeeper noticed that they loved to do everything together and provided the couple with an extra fertilized egg to hatch on their way to becoming their own family. This book is a great way to teach children about love and acceptance because although not all of them will understand that Tango has two fathers, they will certainly learn that each of his fathers loved Tango like any other parent would love their own child. In its subtle manner, it teaches children about tolerance and the duality of love. It shows that despite a child being raised in a heterosexual or homosexual relationship, love is undefined. In short, love is a feeling that can be expressed in any way. Heather Has Two Mommies by Leslie Ann Newman, illustrated by Laurel Cornell, is a book that follows Heather, a young girl who grows up without a father. When she begins daycare, questions arise, and this is when another child asks her, "Why don't you have a daddy?" Her teacher explains that families do not always have one father and one mother. Instead, they can be a mother, or a father and a father. But the most important thing is that everyone loves each other. Upon reading further, Heather's class is tasked with the assignment of drawing their families, and she soon realizes she is not alone. Many of the families have single parents, widowed parents, and step-parents. The topic about same-sex families is one that many parents are not comfortable teaching their children. However, what we need to realize is that children are more apt to conform to situations when compared to adults. It is imperative to have books like these on bookshelves because the landscape of children's classrooms are changing alongside the landscape of our country. Gay and lesbian couples with children are no longer a rarity. In fact, they are the norm. Teaching children that gay and lesbian relationships are wrong provides a disservice to them. We must teach them that it is perfectly fine to grow up in a family that is not like their own. Worm Loves Worm by J.J. Austrian, illustrated by Mike Scarato, is a simple book that discusses gender and sexuality. Worm and Worm want to get married because they love each other. However, their friends make things more complicated when they discuss including traditional wedding ideas, like the need for a bride and a groom. Both Worm and Worm explain that they can be the bride, or they can both be the groom. And as for the wedding, we'll just have to change how it's done, says Worm. Gender isn't always binary, and we do not have to do things the way they've always been done, because it's not necessarily the right way. What we need to understand is that there is no right or wrong way in approaching things, but simply different ways. Before I wrap things up, I want you guys to take a look at these statistics. 4 in 10 LGBT youth, which equates to 42%, say the community in which they live is not accepting of LGBT people. LGBT youth are twice as likely as their peers to say they have been physically assaulted, kicked, or shoved at. Only 1/4 of LGBTQ youth always feel safe in their classrooms. Less than 15% of LGBTQ youth are comfortable talking to a school counselor about their LGBTQ identity. Less than half of LGBTQ youth have access to a support group of their peers. Less than 10% of LGBTQ youth often hear their family express pride about their LGBTQ identity. Too often, LGBTQ people's day-to-day experiences remain structured by discrimination, harassment, and prejudice. So this is what we must do. We must focus on falling in love with each other, in addition to learning how to love ourselves. Remember that the world is constantly changing, but the effects of what that world once was can linger on forever. All things considered, children are the future of the world, so why wouldn't we want them to grow up to be accepting, tolerant, and loving human beings? Books are an excellent way to embed information into their minds, so we must ensure we synthesize useful information so they can have great minds, not average or small minds. LGBTQ children's books are not restrictive, but rather have something to offer to any reader, young or old. We must guarantee all children have access to books that are mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. If they only read books that are reflective of themselves, they will never be able to fully understand the depth of others. On the other hand, if they only read books that are outside of their realm, they will never fully understand and come to terms with who they are, what they like, who they like, etc. It is important for parents to lay a foundation for what homosexuality is and to instill acceptance in young children. By starting discussions about homosexuality and transgenderism early in children's lives, we increase the likelihood that they will grow into tolerant and respectful adolescents. It is so important to have representation within the books we share with children. So give your child the building block of emotional intelligence by encouraging them to be respectful towards every single person they come across, because after all, love is love. Thank you for listening.